and welcome to the FMI Think Tank series. And this is the Analyst Roundtable about 2023 business risks and mitigation challenges. I am Aditi Basu, Head of Marketing at FMI, and I have with me today Nikhil Kaitwade, who is Associate Vice President, Research, Future Market Insights. We have Nandini Roy Chaudhary, Senior Consultant, Future Market Insights for the food and beverages practice. And we have Sabyasachi or Sabi Ghosh. He is Associate Vice President for Healthcare at Future Market Insights. Hi, everyone, and thank you all for joining. So we are assembled here, of course, to talk about the 2023 business risks. What are the challenges businesses are going to face this year, the coming year? What are the mitigation strategies? And what is the impact across several industries for these challenges? Why I say it is the most awaited, because of course, let's face it, right? 2023, 2024 are going to be very, very business cautious years. There is a continuous inflationary trend that sees no signs of decline. We are projecting stunted GDP across all the developed economies. And of course, consumer spending confidence is going down across the developed economies as well. And these are just very few. We are just scratching the surface here. The point of view actually talks about some of the most disruptive trends that all industries will face, some of the biggest challenges, the biggest risks that all industries will face this year. What is the impact per industry and what are the mitigation strategies? But today, let's talk about some of these risks across several industries. And we have taken like a variation, right? We're talking about industrial automation, manufacturing. We're also talking about what we call the recessive-proof industries, for example, food and beverage and healthcare. And we also see what kind of challenges are faced by those industries. So maybe starting with you, Nikhil. You are AVP for Industrial Automation at FMI. You have been, talking to a lot of clients on their issues and how to move forward. So what do you think are these challenges or risks that will kind of reshape or redefine the priorities for these industries this year?
Yes, so when we talk about industrial and machinery segment or the sector as a whole, it has a variety of products, machines, solutions, which are very different in nature and which are very much application specific when we talk about serving to various large scale, medium scale and small scale enterprise. So during the year 2020 and 2021, the entire sector witnessed a decline of nearly 6 to 8%, and the revenues saw a contraction. However, when we talk in terms of year 2022, the spike was great. About 22% increase were witnessed, and majority of the revenues were recorded from North America and Asia Pacific region. About 65% of the revenues were booked in these two regions itself, which constitute about 65% of the market. So when we talk about industrial and machinery and equipment sector as a whole, I am predominantly referring to industrial machinery, construction machinery, farm equipment, MRO sector, and the other power engineering and capital equipments which are utilized across industries. So the biggest or the first foremost risk which I see in this sector is the prolonged business orders, because the customers, the end users, they have now become cautious. Their priorities have been very centric to the organizational growth. The investment decisions are going through a lot of criticalities, and the you can say the decision making criterion has become very stiff. So that has resulted in a slowdown in business, and also that would impact on the new orders that would be received through the first two quarters of this year 2023. So the first is the prolonged business cycles. The established players as well as the you can say the mid-tier operators, they will also face this heat when we talk in terms of new orders or in terms of refurbishment orders. So this is the first risk. The other one is, after the pandemic, the end users have been very cautious in terms of selecting the vendors. So unless you have a good regional presence or a domestic presence, or you are able to prove a good supply of the spare parts, it is not easy to get into the contract list. So building up a good local presence and ability to scale up in tandem with the market situations for the customers or for their end user industry is a challenge, I would say. So the tier one companies or the established players, they almost have presence in all the industrialized economies. But the ones who are new to this market, who are trying to capture new clients, they will face a good risk here while ensuring that the spare parts come up, the MRO service doesn't affect, and the after sales support is robust enough to build a good case. So that's the another risk. So apart from this, there are various risks also when you talk in terms of oil and gas industry or for the construction equipment industry. But these are the uh, foremost risk which I could assess would be governing all the trends or which can be seen across industries. The other major issue which all industries facing right now is the volatility in input material prices, that is steel, aluminium, and the semiconductor chips. You might must be knowing that due to chip shortages, the automotive industry, which is vastly dependent on chips for ADAS automation or for automated features, they largely depend upon the chips, and there has been a shortage of supply from predominantly the East Asian region. So it has impacted their order volumes, their inventories, etc. So any new feature, any new machinery which is coming up in the recent times is loaded with new features. It is loaded with the robotic features, and all these are driven from the chips. And if that shortage comes up, or if this amplifies further, this will result in delay of new product launches or service enhancement. And the other thing I would talk about risk in terms of work management, which every industry is facing, from service industry or manufacturing industry. They want to establish flexible work management models, localized controls, because all we have seen in past 2 to 3 years is managing work and distributing the locus of control has become the priority concern for everyone. For that, they need a good technology integrated model. They need to set up good monitoring controls so that the process doesn't halt and the immediate solution can be delivered. So this three or these 4 points I have noticed would be faced by the manufacturers or would come up as a key challenges in the year 2023.
Yeah, and you kind of trigger me when you said, of course, most of these challenges are extremely like relevant, and I'm sure it resonates with a lot of these top companies, but as well as small to medium companies. And you said one thing that of course, all companies face this, but it's the medium, small companies which are at the biggest risks, right?
Yes.
Because they probably don't have the scale or the resources to get over that in an agile way. So if I may ask you, against each of these solution challenges that you said, so for example, you spoke about prolonged cycles, right? You spoke
Yes.
about supply chain disruptions because of which orders are not being met. Everything is just falling apart for a few industries. So what are your pointed solutions that you are offering clients, or what are the strategies that you're recommending to clients specifically for the, let's say the small to medium businesses so that they can survive this disruption?
Yes, so the first and foremost thing which I have noticed that small to medium scale enterprises, their majority of customer base or the majority of clientele what they have is predominantly very regional centric. So they can come up with the solutions which are tailored for SMEs and startups, because nowadays you must be listening this word again and again that every other day new unicorn are getting created, new startups are getting introduced into the market. So everyone does not want a big capital machine to be fair to start production with. They do not want a machine or some big equipment which can produce, let's say, 1,000 quantities in an hour or in a day. So they would need modular solutions, they would need customized solutions, which has good ability to scale up when as and when they get a new order or they get a new demand. The other thing is, apart from the scalable potential, the solution which I think is they should uh, be very decisive with whether they need to go for an in-house technology development or have a good outsourced vendor, because nowadays everything you can see has been interlinked with data. There are machines, like there are CNC machines, there are monitoring machines, there are inspection machines, they are generating lot of data. They are now capturing the real-time demands, real-time inventory positions of different companies. So now the other issue is how to manage this data, whether the solution provider is having an integrated platform all by themselves and giving a one-stop solution, or they should have a good outsourced channel partner so that this data can be managed. So this specifically small and medium scale enterprise, they would look out for someone who can give one stop solution and not come up with huge implementation investment, or come up with a different set of channel partners for MRO, for data, for service machinery, for data capture, etc. So this will really help these MSMEs to get a good vendor for themselves and also service their own clients in near future.
Yes, so I think some very valid points there, Nikhil. You spoke about being very decisive. You spoke about having more modular solutions, which are easy to scale up, but at the same time, they are not, causing a lot of, they are not very capital intensive. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
And it's all about intelligent collaboration across the value chain. Yeah,
Yes.
it's all about diversifying channel partners, your suppliers. So it's all about that to kind of mitigate any kind of risk. And so of course that is, you spoke a lot about the manufacturing, industrial automation industry. Now let's move to a little bit of a different sector. We're talking about food and beverage, right? Which is known to be, like, food and agri, of course, is known to be recession proof, right? It seems that, okay, probably consumer spending is dipping in other sectors, but it doesn't impact that way, for the food and beverage manufacturers. But some of these challenges which Nikhil said, I see that also resonating in food and beverage. When we talk about scalability, we talk about rising unit costs, rising, supply costs, pressurized margins. And I'm looking at you, Nandini. You are, of course, leading the food practice at FMI. Do you see some of these challenges also kind of resonating in the food and beverage sector, or is it like a completely different set of challenges which companies will be facing this year?
Yeah. So talking about the overall food and beverages ecosystem, so this domain has undergone its fair share of change over the past few years, specifically since COVID happened. Demand underwent a dramatic shift in favor of retail over food service during the pandemic, with, say, for example, meal kits and home delivery skyrocketing in popularity. Today, global economy is in a state of flux, and the companies are actually learning to adapt and operate under a new paradigm. So it will not be right if I say that food and beverage was isolated from such challenges, which Nikhil recently mentioned. So yes, food and beverage domain had some of the challenges which are very much common to the other industry sectors. But yes, of course, it has one specific set of challenge, which is towards the customer perception and customer behavior. So talking more about the challenges which are common into the other industries, which is the rising cost, the raw material supply chain is an issue, supply chain overall disruption, the logistics is a problem, and then, as I said, ever-changing customer taste and preference. There is another important challenge which we are seeing right now after COVID is the topic of sustainability, or the clean labels, as we say, and the problem and the issues with its regulations and policies with respect to every country in the world. These are the few apprehensions that was already there in 2022, and the trend is going to continue for the year 23 as well. Talking more about the supply chain disruptions. So, uh, for example, while stay-at-home orders and border closures no longer restrict the movement of people and goods, supply chain disruptions continue to negatively impact the food and beverages industry. Whether it is labor shortages on the distribution side or complications from having to switch the suppliers due to scarcity. Many manufacturers are feeling the need for more resilient um, processes in the face of potential difficulties. Um, we have seen that, particularly when we were talking about the small and medium enterprises, the list of the vendors or the potential buyers is very much specific, or the logistic chain is very much specific, and any disruption in the networking or the logistics is directly hampering their revenue. So this is something where particularly the SMEs, they do need to adapt the digitization which is happening across the supply chain. Um, Having said this, I'll not say that the MNCs are well equipped with such kind of technologies. CRM, ERM is few to name, where the big MNCs are also struggling to understand, first of all, exactly where or at which node of the supply chain it is to be implemented, how it is to be implemented, and then the big challenge is the people who are working across the node of the supply chain, whether they are the raw material suppliers, the ingredient processors, or even the distributor or suppliers at the retailer's end. The people, they are not skilled. So it is very important to educate each and every node of the supply chain, and then perform and deliberately use the digitization of the overall ecosystem. So this is a very big challenge, which I think will transform the overall food and beverages ecosystem in next decade. But I will also say that this is something where only a handful of the people have started working on it. So there is a long way to go when we say that it will be a digital transformation when it comes to supply chain and logistics ecosystem in food and beverages. Lack of supply chain visibility, flexibility, combined with the need of adaptability and foresightedness, shall remain a key challenge this year from the supplier's perspective. Talking more about the challenges with respect to the consumers, then of course the perception that the consumers have built up around sustainability or eco-friendly packaging or natural or clean labeling, there is still no specific definitions with respect to all the tags that I have called out. When we say sustainability, there are no specific regulations. Even in the developed countries as well, we have no specific policies with respect to the circularity when we talk about packaging material or the food waste management. So this is one of the big talks of the hour. But then again, there has not been any straight away solution that people have come up with and have discussed over the table. So food chain, food waste management is again something where customer perception is at risk. Packaging and labeling is another an entirely different scenario that has to be discussed, and regulatory policies are to be in line with what the customers are perceiving. So yeah, I think these will be the two key risks or challenges that will be ongoing in 2023, where most of the manufacturers, whether they are MNCs or small and medium enterprises, they need to at least start thinking from this perspective. So if I talk about the investors, then also the investors, they need to regulate their money in not just in terms of increasing the production capacity of any target product or any target market they are investing into. They need to go and understand and educate themselves that which point of supply chain needs the influx of the money so that the target market has the potential to grow. So there is a lot of education to be done from the investor's perspective as well, whether it is with respect to the consumerized goods or with respect to the food ingredients. So yeah, these are the few challenges which I think manufacturers should work upon and think upon in 2023.
Thank you for that, Nandini. And what you said and what Nikhil said, I think supply chain, minding the gap in supply chain, bringing in resiliency in supply chain, bringing in the flexibility, digitization, it comes up again and again and again every time. And yet, this discussion has been going on since the pandemic when everything was disrupted, but yet it seems nobody has been able to come back to, pre-pandemic era when we talk about supply chain. And what intrigued me when you said that probably a lot of it is due to a skill gap as well in some cases, especially when we talk about digital transformation of the supply chain. Really, very few understand what that is, what needs to be done, and what are the resources or skill sets that I need to bring in to have that done. So thanks for that. But then I also had I'm kind of intrigued by this point wherein, of course, food security is a key issue today. We see that again and again, which has been kind of, made tenfold because of the geopolitical risks that are going on. And probably sustainable food solution is one of the answers. Sustainable packaging is one of the answers to enable that food security, reduce food waste and all of that. But it's kind of a paradox, I think, because I honestly think that, purpose-driven consumers are very less. We say that, yes, we'll invest a lot. We are willing to pay for the sustainable food solution, for the sustainable packaging, increased cost. But are consumers really willing to pay that extra amount? And especially during times of inflation, which is this year, next year, when we see heightened inflation, will consumers be willing to pay that extra amount for a plant-based meat, for example, or let's say a very super sustainable packaging because of which the prices have increased? What do you think about that?
So see, you correctly pointed out that there is a dilemma that even if we go ahead with the eco-friendly packaging or sustainable practices, it will increase the cost, and are the consumers ready for it? But then the question again arises that why the manufacturers are putting all the weight to the customer and to their decision making. Of course, if there is any disruption in the supply chain, it is directly going to impact the MRP of a certain product. But then it cannot be whole and sole responsibility of the consumer to decide whether they want to go with a sustainable path or not, or whether they want a clean label packaging or not. Talking more about the inflationary economy, so this is actually prompting the consumers to reconsider the kind of value they are receiving from their food and beverage dollars in a variety of ways. FMI did a survey recently, and that suggested that 74% of the consumers are changing their shopping behavior to get more for their money, including buying food in bulk or adjusting the quantities purchased and opting for a less expensive brand or a private label brand. So yes, maybe this suggests that they are okay to pay a premium price, but they want to understand what kind of value they are deriving from it. And if they don't understand the value of a particular product, they would rather move or opt to a less expensive brand, or the recent trend is actually moving to the private label or white label brands. Inflated price, say for example, for grocery or food service, has actually favored in-home meals as consumers try to keep their food expenditure in check. This suggests that manufacturers do have to focus more upon, say, ready-to-meal products or the commodity food products. Plunging into the private label as an upcoming trend. So with value-driven consumers taking a fresh look at alternatives to the pricier named brand items, I think it is very well justified. Sales of store-owned brands actually jumped around 6.5% in the very first quarter to the third quarter of 2022. Private label star performers, if I have to name a few, can be bakery mixes or baking mixes, ready-to-eat food, canned fish and seafood products, and even the baby food. So it's not actually about how much a customer is willing to pay. It is actually about what value the customer is deriving from it. So either it has to be very, very convenient, it has to be valued from the nutritional perspective, or it has to be value for money. So the manufacturers, they have to come up with a straightforward marketing tagline where the customer understands, or the manufacturer should be very open with the communication of exactly what their product is going to give it to their customers. So the customer cannot be in a dilemma of whether they want to pay a premium or not. The product should tell the customer what value they are deriving from it, and then they can decide what to buy from the aisle.
Absolutely true, because it's, yeah, just sustainability will not sell, right? You cannot just say that, okay, wow, I'm making a plant-based product which is sustainable and we are moving into a sustainable solution. That's not going to lure your consumers. It has to be about the nutritional component. It has to be about the value that the product is giving, and of course at a very optimum price range. So thanks for that, Nandini. But any other mitigation measures beyond what you just said that will address some of the challenges that you mentioned before for food and beverages?
Yes. So see, I always try to tell my clients and suggest my clients that if you are maybe entering into a market, or if you are trying to rebrand, or you are already into a market and you are trying to strategize for the future, focus and streamline what you already have rather than building something entirely new. Utilize local resources and raw materials to mitigate cost. So rather than following just a trend in the market, make a product which is specific to a target group with a specific functionality. Understand how customers eat, identify the target audience, and update the message as per that. So for example, in India, which is one of the largest producer and consumer of milk, so you cannot sell a dairy alternative product just like that in a country such as India. Either you have to have a target flavor profile or a target generation, for example Gen Z, with certain nutritional benefits. So you cannot just enter into a market and say that plant-based or dairy alternative milk will be good for a consumer. You have to highlight the nutritional profile of it. So raising the nutritional profile is something which will be important for each and every brand which is there in either consumerized goods or ingredient. So there is no longer a stark trade-off for health. Trust and transparency is very important. So having a product definition and credible label will help build trust for both the market actors, and it will reduce confusion for the consumers. Communication and marketing should be honest and realistic without exaggerating or sugarcoating the facts. So and it is also important for the investors, as I said earlier, that if they're investing, they have to think where they are investing, and they should actually move away from investing into the heavily processed industry, because as per our research in FMI, we can vouch that the newest wave of innovation in the overall food and beverages ecosystem seems to be around clean label with natural and easy to understand ingredients, and consumers are conceptually moving away from the lab-based food to the food-based food. So it is important for investors to understand where they are putting their money into. And yeah, so to be candid, I think when we say supply chain disruption or market disruption, it is a very subjective concept, and for any disruption to become a long-term sustainable business opportunity, there are multiple wheels that need to move together. The unique challenges that every sector, be it automotive or automation or food and beverages or healthcare, so any unique challenges that every sector or even every country possess for entrepreneurs or investors, it might be challenging, but it is not impossible. So it's just identifying the target audience and then updating the message as per that.
Absolutely, and there will be disruptions. There will be new risks every year, but there'll always be demand for the right product. Because, like you just summarized, it all starts with what your consumers want. So identifying the right set of your consumers, what they want, and then working backwards to the right product profile that is meeting their needs. And everything else, I think, falls into place. So really, it's about having a kick-ass product which has the right value, which is communicating the right message to your target audience. Thank you so much, Nandini, for your views on that. And we'll move to healthcare, again, a very different sector. But I think one of the most dynamic, I would say, because the kind of innovations we've seen happening in healthcare over the past 5 years, it's been stupendous. So, Sabi, what are your views? Like, what kind of risks do the healthcare players face in the market? So be it pharma or health tech companies or medical device companies, do you see similar risks or different? So, what are the challenges, so to speak?
So when I talk about healthcare can be broadly categorized into pharmaceuticals, medical devices, life science, and healthcare services. So pharmaceutical, we have seen that there is a huge growth in pharmaceutical space, medical devices space, due to launching of vaccine, implementation of vaccines in many countries, and emergency drug approvals. But as in we move to the healthcare services space, wherein large organizations are involved, providing different type of treatments or diagnostics to the patient. There is a potential risk of coming from 4 different categories, which can be the patient-oriented risk. There is the technology-oriented risk. There will be the process-oriented risks that are coming into picture. So when I talk about patient-oriented risk, of course, it clearly talks about misdiagnosis or critical ailments, prescribing errors, poor communication between patient and healthcare staffs or physicians. So this kind of risk are creating a lot of miscommunication between the patient and the health as well as the physicians. Now talking about the manufacturer standpoint, of course there is a lot of risk involved to bring a product to the market. They come, there is a lot of external factors that come. Regulatory scenario is one of them, which poses a threat always, because of the strict guidelines. Post-COVID, there has been the regulatory bodies are more stringent towards approving the process until and unless there is any kind of clinical evidence from X number of studies. It becomes very difficult for the manufacturers to bring the product into the market. So that is one of the potential risks from the manufacturer standpoint. Another thing I like to talk about is cyber security and data breaches that happens in healthcare. This is one of the key elements that is being there in healthcare for quite a long time. And if you talk about data breaches and cyber security, since healthcare deals with a lot of patient records, and there are a lot of I should say a lot of institutes. They do have things in place which takes care of the data security. However, uh, still a lot of data breaches are happening due to software malfunction or cyber criminal threats. So these are from the patient perspective. Now, when we talk about the organizational risk in a healthcare, it's more of the healthcare associated infection that is spreading. If you see, there are around 2 million cases of healthcare associated infection uh, that are yearly notified by CDC in US. Okay, out of these 2 million cases, almost 42% contribute towards the surgical infection or urinary tract infection, and the mortality rate is also quite high, which is around 4 to 5% from that infection. So I feel that these are the three key elements the healthcare organizations are facing at this point of time. And when I talk about mitigating the risk, though healthcare organizations are spending a lot on the EMR or maintaining the electronic medical record, cyber security, and using vendors who are more reliable other than small type vendors. Still, they should look at going towards most digital or move completely towards paperless information, where it can be stored and can be analyzed by different stakeholders across the industry. With respect to healthcare related infections, though organizations are taking a lot of effort to maintain that, uh, there are still many healthcare facilities need to be careful enough that if there is any more pandemic comes in, how this can be handled at this point of time.
Yeah, and what you spoke about the infection risk, I think that is something which all industries and the whole entire, civilization is at risk if any other, pandemic were to happen, and probably we are not prepared, honestly, and 2020 has shown us that. But for example, what you mentioned about cyber threat, I think that's a very key area because healthcare, of course, deals with a lot of patient data, a lot of patient record. And they probably are still not at par in terms of adopting cybersecurity or data privacy measures yet. So that's a very interesting take that you mentioned. But I'm quite curious to understand that healthcare as a sector, does it also face these kind of margin pressures which a lot of other industries are today faced with because of high increasing unit cost, high fuel cost? At the same time, decreasing consumer spending. Is that something which healthcare is also faced with? Because I think as a consumer, I wouldn't want to, go down on consumer spending on healthcare. But just wanted to know your views on that also.
Certainly, the healthcare in healthcare also this margin spending. There is a pricing pressure when it comes to the devices. Okay, there is a lot of pricing pressure that happens, and due to this happens primarily due to high inflation that is happening across the countries, and the economies are looking at a very sluggish growth at this point of time. Though there has been there is a good healthcare expenditure that are coming from the government, but there is a lot in countries like Asia Pacific, or if you move to countries like Middle East, there is a lot of out-of-pocket expenses comes out, which are not covered by the payers. So when it comes to the out-of-pocket expenses, any kind of surgeries or any kind of devices that are being used, it really creates a pressure on the patient. Okay, so there is lot of pricing pressure that is there from the patient standpoint.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure there would be, and that's why that was my question. So thanks for that, Sabi. Well, of course, it's very clear from what we've been discussing so far that across industries, there is severe challenge, right? So, in such a very difficult business climate, what do you recommend to the clients that you work with? I'm sure, they have these kind of questions, so what's my next step? How do I proceed? So what do you recommend to your clients on how to, let's say, transform their business or still, show revenue profits in such a very difficult business climate? So maybe starting with you, Nikhil.
Yes, so Aditi, as we have gone through the opinions from all the participants, we have noticed that there is a significant pressure in terms of making the products available in the market, securing the raw materials, having a dynamic and responsive supply chain. So this is where most of the solutions that we provide to our clients are. So that is on the building towards good channel partners, establishing a good after sales network, developing alternate vendors, having a stringent vendor selection criterion. If not an established vendor or a supplier, who would be your next? What kind of steps you can take to co-partner, to co-develop your vendors, how much or what specifically you would like to invest in your vendors, so that if there is any risk or there is any slowdown in demand, you can leverage upon good partnerships and coordination. So all the efforts which are directed mainly towards development of good supply chain, alternate vendors, then having an exhaustive list of participants in terms of component supply, in terms of raw material supply, setting up the good standards of your product, or defining the product for each of the application where it is required the most. Most of the even the client come to us with a problem statement, uh, and they want to understand where can we source our material from, who can be our preferred list of supplier, uh, where our competition is sourcing from, which region is good to go with in terms of developing supply chain. Should we go near shore or offshore, where our facilities should be located, and if we have a facility, what other network we can develop, whether we should go to hub and spoke model or we should go for other traditional models. So this is the one side, or this is predominantly most of the clients ask for regarding the channel partner, supply chain and distribution channel. And uh, into the industrial space, uh, the next growth pillars what I foresee would be industrial robotics, food and farm process machinery, packaging and warehouse logistics, and automation solutions for uh, distribution automation.
Perfect. Excellent, Nikhil. You have some very strong points, how you summarized on, what you're recommending to clients, how to operate in such a very difficult business climate. But you've also spoken about some of the key growth markets amidst all this downturn. And moving over to food and beverages, let's start with what are the growth markets within food and beverage that will still grow despite whatever downturn trends we see.
Specific domains that we would see rising in future irrespective of the supply chain issues or even the raw material costing issues. So of course we have our beloved plant-based ecosystem, which is actually not going to stop, and it is going to see a similar trend that has been seen in the last 5 years. And the good thing is that now almost every company has started talking about it, whether it is with respect to the ingredient perspective or with respect to the end product or finished product perspective. So a lot of talk is already happening. Many of the developing economies have now already entered into the market, and they have a huge investment which is going on right now, and a lot of patents has been filed for the future. So food-based, plant-based is something which is for sure going to be an upscale. In a plant-based, I think I'll specifically focus upon right now the upcoming trends that will be there in the market, though they are still niche, are the plant-based food service ecosystem and plant-based marine life. So these are the two sectors where the investments are not quite there yet. But since a lot of talk is happening, the next big thing in plant-based ecosystem would be food service and the marine life. Apart from plant-based food, I think since after COVID, the personal care and healthcare has been top of the mind of each and every consumer. So any product which is related to gut health or cognitive health will gain traction. So for all the private label brands specifically, they should focus and invest on cognitive health or women's health for that matter, and gut health. So these are the three criteria which will have a very positive impact in the market if somebody is going to invest in such products, because all these products are, again, we have to keep a note that every single product is very easy to understand. So there is no complicacy in terms of what ingredients might be there in it or what kind of functionality or benefit it would have with respect to the customer's perception. So we can clearly see again the trend that if the product is very simple and it is giving you some kind of functionality, the customer will go into the retail aisle and buy it. So these are few of the sectors that will be growing into the future. Suggesting more from the manufacturer's perspective. So I think up till now, as Nikhil said, that most of the companies, they will be discussing about the manufacturing efficiencies, supply chain, logistics, brand management capabilities. But up till now, vendor assessment and consumer insights and assessment was something which was lagging behind. I think out of the overall lot, only 2% of the manufacturers were actually focusing on analyzing the vendors or taking a feedback from the vendors or taking a feedback from the customers inside. So I think these two will be a key agenda, because I think manufacturers and big MNCs understand that digital technologies are now making shopping very easy for the customers via mobile or point of sale. And customers now have instant access to compare the brand. So if you are not doing the comparison yourself, the customer will do the comparison by themselves. So yeah, I think from the supply side, vendor assessment and consumer insights capability is something that will be focused upon as well.
And moving over to Sabi, in healthcare, where do you see the growth prospects for players in this industry?
Right. So when I see healthcare, the healthcare industry has transformed in many ways in last 2 to 3 years. Okay, there has been a lot of venture investment activity that has happened in the digital healthcare space. So digital transformation in healthcare is the next big thing. Right. So when you talk about digital transformation in healthcare, few areas which will really be a topic to discuss will be on the remote monitoring and wearables, digital therapeutics, surgical robotics, as well as home diagnostics. These are the 4 key aspects where digital healthcare will move in next few years. So when I talk about digital health technologies, there has been a robust acceptance which has transformed the standard of care for patients, and nowadays it's more personalized and it's in a connected manner. So with the emergence of AI in healthcare, a lot of innovations are happening in the diagnostic imaging space, right from drug discoveries to clinical decision support systems, which has improved the care for patients, efficacy, and has empowered the workflow automation across the healthcare settings. Okay. So I think we should more focus on digital therapeutics or digital care, which includes telehealth, telemedicine, surgical robotics, as well as home diagnostics.
Absolutely, and these are set to kind of transform the healthcare industry of tomorrow. Yes. We're talking about healthcare 3.0. That's where we are going to. Well, thank you, Sabi. And we've come to the end of this roundtable. And I would like to give big thanks to all of our analysts who have joined for this roundtable. It's been a very interesting discussion. And for our audience, I'm sure you know all the action is here because the FMI Think Tank series is where we discuss the emerging and leading markets of tomorrow. Today, we of course discussed the business risks and how to mitigate that. And thank you all so much for joining again. And look forward to the next video in the series.
Thank you. Thank you, Aditi.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.